To live
there,
stream
so
the
we're going to be
meeting.
YouTube famous here. All right.
So it looks like we have a quorum. Is that correct?
Yes.
Try to get rolling here.
Yep.
Before we get rolling, I think to Tori's point, it'd be great if everyone could just keep their microphone muted. And if there's a question, raise your hand. We'll do our best to try and grab that, only because I know I don't want to speak for everyone else, but I've got a dog, I've got a cat, I've got 2.3 kids, the whole thing, and you never know what's happening.
Average household.
Yeah, the average household. So if you don't know how to do that, you can hover over your name, or you can go to the lower left-hand part of your screen. Tim, are you comfortable with that? Have you done that before?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm just waiting to do roll call, and then I'll go to mute.
Okay, perfect. And Eunice, you're on, but your camera's not on. Can you hear us okay? Perfect.
Yep, she's good.
All right, well, let's do the quick roll call. Therese, that'd be great.
Okay, Jeff Miller.
Here.
Nicholas Bondagwin is excused. Brandon Fallman.
Here.
Kathy Goss is excused. John Hannum is excused. Alina has resigned. Dwayne Hilty.
Here.
Tim Clark.
Here.
Mark May.
Here.
Mike Pennington.
Here.
Samantha Ross has not joined us yet.
I did speak with Samantha yesterday. I do believe that she is planning to attend, so she's probably just running a little late. So that in mind, everyone have a chance to look over the agenda. Anyone wanted anything changed? If not, we'd entertain a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve the minutes as presented. Tim
Clark.
State your name, please.
Tim Clark.
And Dwayne Hilty seconds that motion.
Any discussion by anybody? All in favor? It's a weird thing having to do a unmute and everyone all in favor, but all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next up on the agenda is the previous month's minutes. Everyone have a chance to review those minutes? If so, again, entertain a motion to approve.
Mark May moves to approve the minutes as presented.
Brandon.
So a motion by Mark and a second by Brandon. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. So we're moving right through this. Eunice, you're going to be up here in just 2 seconds because we don't have action items.
I just wanted to note that Samantha has joined us.
Yep, we see that Samantha is there. Samantha, can you hear us okay? Okay, let's move forward.
Welcome, Samantha.
So Eunice is joining us, and Tori, do you want to talk about kind of just her coming back and doing a quick represent of what we did before?
Sure. So, and I'll touch on this later as far as maintaining as much normalcy as possible with city operations related to COVID. So to the extent possible, Eunice has kept the comp plan moving forward. She's done additional outreach and is moving it that much further along. So there's just additional feedback as she goes out into the community. And so grateful to have Eunice with us again to get an update on the status, to see what's changed since the last time. If you remember, as far as our Salem, it's an effort to update the comprehensive plan. It's been a long time since the last update. So the city's going through that process, and she can share more.
Great, thanks. Is it okay if I share my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm trying to think last time when I was here, when that was, I think it was in the fall. But I just want to give a brief update of where we are. Tori, you did a great job summarizing the project, so I will kind of breeze through that. You all kind of know what we're doing in terms of updating the comprehensive plan. It's all about kind of directing future growth and development. This is just a reminder that the update to the comprehensive plan impacts not just the city limits, not the area within the city, but also the area in the unincorporated areas of Marion and Polk County. So it's that gray area on this map. That's the area where you hear people talking about there's 60,000 more people by 2035. So it's that gray area. So we've been doing this visioning since late last summer, and we've been out and about talking to the community about what their priorities are for growth, what their concerns are, what they hope to improve in the community. And we've really kind of gotten input in a lot of different ways. I'm going to focus a lot today on the scenarios, which is really map-based. But, you know, a lot of the comments that we've gotten have been just, this is really important to me. It's not an idea that can be put on a map, but it's something I want to keep in mind as we kind of write the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan. So what we've done with kind of all of the input that can't necessarily be mapped is we have summarized them in what we're calling guiding principles. So each guiding principle, each topic kind of has a guiding principle. So for housing, sorry, my son just came in. For example, you know, it's about diversity of housing types, but one of the things we really heard about housing is people want affordable and accessible housing. So for each of the topics, we have one, and we have a survey online that kind of digs deeper into the details of each topic. And we're trying to make sure that what we've heard from the community and reflecting back to the community can be confirmed, because this is really kind of will really be the foundation of the goals and policies in the comp plan. So what I'm going to focus on today, though, is the mapping and the scenarios. So last time we met, we had a huge map we rolled out on the table, and you guys put some stickers on the map, I think mostly in West Salem, but elsewhere in the community as well. So we have done the mapping at workshops, at community meetings, and also online. My son's now going to try to. Anyway, and so we've taken all of that information, working with a consultant team, and created what we're calling scenarios. And the scenarios are essentially different options for how we could grow. They have been digitized, so this is just kind of the flow of how the ideas became the scenarios. But one of the things I wanted to stress about the scenarios is that each one is not necessarily a full picture of how we could grow in the future. So we're not saying, hey, community, do you want to be A? Do you want to be B? Do you want to be C? What we're trying to do instead with the 4 scenarios is say, here are a bunch of different ideas in each one. What do you like and dislike about them? Ultimately, the vision or the comprehensive plan map will be some sort of combination. And there could be still even new ideas that we haven't heard yet. So if you feel like I didn't really like A, I kind of like parts of B and C, that's okay. That's kind of where we're headed. So scenario A, I should talk about the colors. You're all probably familiar with colors, but housing generally is represented by yellow and orange. Orange is more the higher density multifamily, and yellow is more a single family. Purple is mixed use, so that's, you know, commercial with residential typically, and then red is commercial and blue is industrial. So scenario A is most like kind of how we're growing today. If you were part of phase 1 of this project, we did kind of look at what could we look like in the future if we didn't do this visioning. And scenario A is really most similar to that. As you'll see, like most of the housing growth, the yellow and the orange is really on the edges. So outer West Salem, outer South Salem sees a lot of the growth. And that's simply because that's where most of our vacant land is. That's where we're seeing a lot of housing right now. The commercial is generally where it is today, industrial generally where it is today, and there's just a little bit of mixed use. So scenario A, again, is most similar to how we're growing now. And this is just a reminder that kind of on the edges, when we talk about housing, we're talking about all types of housing. So not just single family, but also 2, 3, 4, smaller multifamily and larger multifamily. So scenario B has a little bit more housing, multifamily housing in South and West, but it concentrates a lot more growth in mixed use corridors. So you'll see mixed use on Liberty, mixed use on Edgewater, State Street, downtown. So you'll see a little bit more purple around the city. And when we talk about mixed use, I just want to stress that we're not saying these areas have to be where the properties have commercial and residential. We are just creating the flexibility if we go this route. So you could do housing, you could do office, you could do retail, or you could combine it on the same property, either in the same building or multiple buildings on a lot. So when we're talking about mixed use, it's really just that flexibility of uses. And you're all familiar with mixed use, right? We have some in North Downtown, etc. Scenario C is a little bit less housing on the edges because we're really concentrating more growth in corridors. So you'll see a big purple strip on Lancaster. That's a mixed use corridor in this scenario. You'll see more on Commercial Street in South Salem, Edgewater, West Salem, North Downtown. So a lot of the new growth in scenario C is envisioned to be that kind of mixed use. And then the other idea we're really trying to test in scenario C is the neighborhood hubs. And we talked a lot about that when I came last time, the idea of kind of smaller businesses that are kind of supposed to serve the neighborhood. So really small compatible businesses within the single family neighborhoods. We haven't worked out the details of what exactly the uses could be, the scale, the scope. We've heard some concerns from the community that, we don't want commercial to take over single family neighborhoods. So there'd be some sort of limits on how big it could be, how tall it could be in the uses. But generally, we've heard a lot of support for this idea, and we're just kind of getting that confirmation, hopefully, through this process. So it's just a picture of a small florist in a neighborhood when we're talking about neighborhood hubs. And then scenario C really focuses growth on the inner core. You'll see a bunch of purple downtown, North Downtown, out State Street, down south, and then a lot more in West Salem. You see a lot less housing kind of throughout the city because it's really concentrated in the core. Commercial is generally left where it is. This scenario really emphasizes it on Silverton Road. And then one of the other big ideas is this idea of expanding Riverfront Park north of downtown. So if you see that kind of dark green color near the downtown area, north of downtown, that's the idea of expanding the park. This idea really kind of came from the public workshops and the outreach we did in the fall, where folks were saying, there's some really underutilized industrial buildings there. It's been difficult to kind of redevelop those. Is there a way to kind of make it a community amenity and better access to the river? Again, the scale and scope of how big that is that one property? Is it multiple? Is it a path? How, exactly what that looks like hasn't been worked out. But we're just trying to see, is this something the community really is interested in? So those are, Daddy. Oh dear. Daddy. So we have a scenario. Dad. 1 second. Jay, I need you to come here. Okay. Oh goodness. So we have a survey just on the scenarios online, and I don't know if you've seen this yet, but it really walks through all the different aspects of all the scenarios and asks what do you like? What do you not like? Do you have any new ideas? So it'd be great if you could participate in the survey. And if you have any questions, let me know. Again, our goal, I should say, just timeline wise, given this pandemic we're in, we haven't been able to be out and about like we would want to. We spent a lot of the summer and the fall and the winter connecting to the community at different events and community organizations. And we are trying to do that virtually. We've gone to some neighborhood associations. We've been to some of the community partnership teams. We've met with counselors and planning commissioners, et cetera. But it is difficult to make sure that we're really hearing from all the folks that we heard from before. So if we're able to do the outreach we want to do, we hope to have a draft vision by the fall. And we would bring that to the council and the planning commission at a joint work session in September. We would then obviously open it back up and make sure that the community is on board with that draft vision before we brought it to council and asked them to basically accept it and direct us to move forward with all the details of the goals and policies and the adoption of the maps. So there's still a lot of work to do, but I think we're at an exciting point where we're at scenarios and we're getting closer to the vision. And so it's a great time to get involved if you want to spread the word. I think I should say that the draft vision will be not just these blobs on a map like the scenarios. It will be property specific. So people may start getting involved then when they see oh, they actually want my property to be mixed use or my property to be commercial or what have you. So it will be at that level of detail when we get to the draft vision. I will stop sharing my screen and I'm happy to answer any questions. I know that was really quick. Sorry about that.
That was great.
I got a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Going back to the scenarios that you had, I didn't notice any of those community hubs in West Salem. Were there any of those scenarios that pointed it out, if there was any interest?
So I should say that the map, scenario C is the one that has the community hubs, and it's just these little pink dots, and you're right, I don't know if there's any pink dots that are shown. There are a couple in West Salem, and the scenario C, though, where those dots are, it's not supposed to indicate where we would put those dots, if that makes sense.
No, I was just seeing if there was any interest
Yes.
of doing that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There has been interest. There's been interest in both some community hubs and also some kind of mixed use centers in West Salem. I'm not sure the West Salem community is completely all on board. So we're kind of still testing that.
Okay, thank you. And great job for doing this.
Thank you.
Eunice, quick question. The scenarios that you have is based on the data that you received. Is that correct? Maybe I missed out on that initially. There's 4 different scenarios. Is that correct?
Yes. So essentially we took all the different input from the community and put it in different maps. So we're trying to reflect back the ideas that we've heard. The draft vision again will kind of be a combination, and there could be new ideas. So we're not limiting ourselves necessarily to what's only shown on the maps when we get to the vision, but these are kind of the big ideas. And you'll see that, for example, there's not a lot of change for industrial. We really tried to ask folks like, are there new areas where you want industrial? And that really hasn't been something that people have talked a lot about. I mean, we don't have a lot of blank land for new industrial, for example, but we have heard things about different types of businesses. People have been interested in like live workspace, for example. So not just your home occupation, but being able to run a small business with a retail front, for example, in a home. So we've heard different ideas that aren't really reflected in the map again, but that would impact, right, how we use our land. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, it did. It sounds like maybe as an example, if I had a vision for what I would like to see for housing and hubs and that sort of thing, and Mark had a different vision, would be scenario B as an example, or Mike had a third, so on and so forth. So it seems like you're taking kind of the chunks of there's this big group here. Think that's kind of a scenario A, this group scenario D, and you're kind of putting those all together. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, so we're both using the survey and then input from, our outreach to say like, are generally people leaning this way for this area or this way? And then ultimately we still need to meet our projections, right, for growth. So we need to meet our housing and our employment forecasts. So we can't, even if the community said we don't want any more commercial land or what have you, we still need to put it somewhere. So then it's kind of up to, us to figure out like, well, no one wanted commercial land, but we still need to put it somewhere.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And last question from me is the timeline when you're going to actually start speaking with specific property owners. Can you give that timeline? And then again, because I would imagine there's going to be some different energy at that point when it comes to people talking about their property and the rezoning of that. And then the survey website that we can go to or share with people.
Mm-hmm. So we hope to talk to property owners when we get closer to that vision, the property level map. So whether that's late summer, early fall, we will reach out to folks. Because it is a citywide effort, we're still trying to think about the best way to do that, because not all areas of the city will necessarily see a change in the new vision, but some areas could see quite a bit of change. So we're still kind of thinking through that, but we will reach out to property owners. I agree with you. I think neighborhood associations as well will maybe get more. I think just generally people will get kind of more interested when they actually see the details.
Yeah. I think, I'm not trying to monopolize this or anything, but being in commercial real estate, Brandon, you're in real estate. Several people here own real estate. It always becomes problematic when people who don't own the property want to see something done and there's not some feasible way of getting there. There's not a financial way of getting there. I think energy gets a little bit heightened when those conversations start happening. So, and again, the email, or not the email, but the website address.
I'll put it, oh, there's no chat.
Can you
City of
share it with
Salem.
Tori? And
Yeah,
then Tori can send it out. Is that correct?
I'll do that.
Perfect.
And I should say that in most instances, the way we're thinking about changes to the comprehensive plan map is to create more flexibility for how you could use your property. There might be some instances where like, well, this industrial land is right in the middle of a single family, no one's ever used it, and maybe it should be multifamily or whatever, right? There could be instances like that, but I think generally what we've heard from the community is they want some flexibility. So whether it's mixed use, live work, allowing multifamily or allowing smaller multifamily, things like that. That's more what we've heard. So, but yeah, I hear you. Once we start plopping stuff on a map, there could be some concern.
So cute.
Love kids. And does anyone else have any questions for Eunice at this point?
Can I just say one more thing? Ask a question?
Please.
So the area that you guys obviously focus on in West Salem, we've heard, and I think we talked about this last time, there's kind of an interest long-term at seeing that industrial area be mixed use, but maybe allowing some craft industrial or some small scale industrial. That's just generally what we've heard. I'm wondering if you've heard different or if your kind of vision for that area has changed or not.
Are you referring to along 2nd Street?
Yeah, just that big industrial area right now.
Oh, Rachicha, like the big Retruit and like the current industrial area. Is that what you're referring to?
Right.
Yeah, as far as what we've seen is the food processors, mostly, I guess, towards the south, abutting 2nd Street area, they seem to be phasing out of, some operations, transitioning to different uses. But as you go towards the north, they're very much, they're making more investments. Even some of the food processing, Truett is investing as well. But you get back into the machine manufacturing and the high-tech manufacturing back there, and they're just putting in more equipment. So I don't anticipate those changing too soon, maybe 10, 20 years or more down the road. But yeah, given the investments, and they keep doing more operationally at their current location. So I don't anticipate any changes. I don't know about the rest of the group, but that's my interaction with the businesses.
So it sounds like maybe there's interest in keeping it more industrial instead of having a future vision for making that mixed use. It's just
Yeah,
something we should think about because that's one of the areas that could see change. Obviously, we'll work with all of you. So it would just be good to, I guess, kind of understand where you guys are on that area.
And I guess if there were the flexibility, so if you could designate the comp where it could be mixed use, like long-term, so they don't have to go through that process, but maintain the existing industrial so it doesn't feel like they're going to get pushed out. If that could be communicated or accomplished at some level, that would probably be ideal because, could facilitate a transition, but it had to be communicated that way. So it doesn't feel like they're getting pushed out. I think that could work, but yeah, Mike represents businesses over there. I don't want to put him on the spot, but it's just something, there is sensitivity to not feeling welcome. So if they could maintain the best of both worlds, if you could, so to speak, that'd be ideal.
Okay. If you think more about that, let me know. We have generally when we did State Street, for example, and we changed that whole corridor to mixed use,
Right.
We introduced the idea of the continued use. So if you're there now, you can stay and operate and make upgrades and improvements and you're fine. It's just that the idea is eventually you could become mixed use. So
Right.
we've kind of introduced that idea, but I think you're right in terms of how we communicate that and how it's actually structured. It's going to be really important if we go that route.
Speaking about that greater industrial area, and not necessarily just the 2nd Street corridor, I guess what would make sense to me, Tori mentioned it's going to be 10, 20 years before some of those uses probably want to rotate out. They're making investments. We have some pretty successful businesses, industrial businesses in that area. But one thing I think that is key is as owners of those operations eventually need to expand or would want to consider another location, The use of that land after them is important, meaning they may be less likely to attract an additional industrial user to replace them sometime in the future, which makes exiting a piece of real estate and that asset more challenging. If you have strictly industrial zoning and you have to sell it to an industrial user, that could be challenging. Right now, I'm not aware of, I don't know if anybody else is, but of any significant industrial user looking to move into that area anew. So I think there's a pretty significant difference between continued use and what the ultimate use in the future is. So it makes sense to me that, certainly allowing those uses to continue and making sure there are compatible neighboring uses is the current state of affairs. But should those owners look to expand and, go to Mill Creek or whatever their options are, they have a way to exit those properties to a different use. Because I just don't think that that's where major industrial investment is going to happen in the future. So as we're planning for the future, I think that's a key feature of that, is that there are more uses allowed, so we can rotate that inventory, a decade or two in the future.
Okay, that's really helpful. I appreciate that comment.
Yeah, I
I
would
wonder if we
add,
could even have some policies
oh,
like
sorry.
that. Oh, go ahead.
Since you're transitioning to the property specific, you could just test it out. You could put it out there, and then internal discussions, how you can maintain the comp designation as a mixed use and continue the industrial use. You could work on that communication through that process. It'd be interesting to see what the community response is to that designation, because I think there is opportunity. And to Mark's point, we have been talking to existing businesses, obviously, but yeah, the trend would be, to reinvest in those properties would be expensive for a different industrial use. They probably want to try and find some blank, vacant land that could. So it's one of those, trying to balance the best of both. And I think identifying those properties specifically for in the comp, you could get some feedback at that level.
Okay, I might tap you guys to help when we get to the property level.
Okay.
Outreach. Thank you.
Well, great. If there's not any other questions, Eunice, we're probably ready to move on and cut you loose, unless you want to hang out with us.
I'm gonna go deal with my children.
Good
Thank you.
to see
Thank you
again.
for coming.
Thank you.
So Tori, next up, it looks like there's progress 5B on the agenda,
Yep.
progress on grant fund projects.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I was happy to say, for the inaugural Zoom meeting, this is going awesome. So thank you for, I guess everyone has really good experience at this point, but I think it's going really smoothly. So yes, as we've continued to do business, a little not as usual, but continue to do operations as a city. We have three, as we went into the pandemic issue, we had 3 projects in construction. So we have Truett, I think they're wrapping up. We have the office building on 3rd Street, they're nearing completion as well. West Salem Machinery, they've invested in additional milling equipment, so they're doing more automated pieces that fit into their whole assembly line production. So they're doing a lot of that more in-house, so they're not having to outsource those things. So additional jobs in the area, additional investment. So those 3 projects keep moving forward without any hiccups. So those are moving forward. We have another building that's being proposed along Patterson. So we're in discussions now with the owner looking to build a building out there. So it'd be an office use near Chicha off Patterson. So it'd be housing multiple different office type uses around there. Really neat building. So as soon as we can get to a point of what I'd like to do, if we have more Zoom meetings, preferably in person, bring those guys in, the beneficiaries of the grant program, let them speak to the project and how it's helped. And also bring in, I think it'd be nice to see people with their projects, if they're pending approval or whatever, just so what's coming in up front. So maybe we could do like a before after conversation or something like that. Because when you see these architectural drawings of offices and different things that are being proposed, it's pretty exciting. I felt like, and we, March is when we started talking with the new building, the person looking to build an office building on Patterson. So I was afraid that, the turbulent market and everything was going to delay that, but it's just things are still moving forward. So I'm happy to report that. We hope to share, get more projects going. Seems like we typically have about 3 per year. So I think so far it's been pretty usual activity. So it's nice to wrap up the last 3, and then we'll hopefully see additional projects that we can report on in future meetings. Any questions about grant projects or? Yeah, Mike.
Sorry, I just kind of give everybody an update on Truett. We just moved into our space this past Monday. So everybody moved over the weekend. So we've got our new offices open, and I just wanted to say thanks to everybody for the help, and it's been a really smooth process. So thanks to the city and helping with the grant program. And once all this COVID stuff calms down a little bit, I can reach out to Tori and extend invitations to others on the board if they want to come visit and see the work that was done.
Sounds good. Any other questions on grant? Okay.
So speaking of that, Tori, you had mentioned maybe getting back into person. Is there any kind of timeline? I know you're probably going to get into some of that with the city reopening later on in the agenda, but can you just quickly, is there any idea of when we'll be able to meet in person as opposed to doing Zoom?
Yeah, probably. I could speak more to it later in the agenda.
Perfect.
So as far as phasing, we're kind of last in the phases. There's 3 phases to the city opening. We don't do as much public facing. If you like City Hall, where you have to go pay a ticket or go to the court or go to the PAC desk if you're talking to Public Works or you're talking to planning. Those are more public facing. We have public meetings, and that's really the only time that we're that much public facing. So we're in the 3rd phase. So it would probably be later. And even if we get to when we get to that point, it'll probably be trying to keep distant and, I don't know, masked. I don't see how it isn't a meeting that's not masked at this point. And that part has been communicated. City council is conducted over Zoom as well. They're doing the same approach where they broadcast on YouTube and they do Zoom. So I would say that would probably be the first indicator as soon as council starts transitioning to in person, but they can also draw a bigger crowd with the public. And so I would look to them. They would be kind of the tip of the spear. As soon as they transition to more in person is when we would start to see that as well. And they're still doing Zoom. I don't have a definitive date.
Okay. Well, I didn't mean to jump ahead of the agenda. I just, you mentioned getting back together, and I thought.
Yeah, well, I miss seeing you guys, so it's nice seeing faces, but
yeah.
At some point.
So next on our agenda, if you guys are following along, we have 4 members that are terming off the board. And as the current chair, I think it's really important to recognize briefly for a few seconds people who volunteer their time on these boards to make our community a little bit better. They're sacrificing other things in their life, whether it be family time or work time or a combination. And I just think it's important to take a few seconds. And so I briefly have just a couple little notes about everyone who's terming off. And so I'm going to just go through that real quickly. And then I think Tori has something he wants to contribute as well. First, Nick is terming off. That means he's been on the board, what, 2 years or 4 years? Is that right? 4 years? And
no, so we're there 2 3-year terms. So in a lot of cases, most of you guys come into a partial term. So you could have like 8 years dedicated to the almost a decade. So yeah, it's a long time.
Oh, it's a long time.
Yeah, it's a long time. And I know Nick's been on the board. I say this in an endearing, kind way. I think Nick is such a character. I wish he was here. for his last meeting. I just think he's such a character. I've come to really enjoy his perspective and the way he gets involved and joins our group. And I know he's been the chair. I can't recall if he was vice chair before. I'm sure that he was at one point or another. And what's that?
Yeah, I don't know if he's vice chair. I know he was chair. Yeah,
he was chair,
wow.
and
He was chair.
I know he was chair at one point, and you know he has a lot of history being on the board. I think it may have been his second stint on the board, and so I just think it's important to recognize that briefly. And too bad he's not here today to kind of go through that. But and then next, obviously, Dwayne, you're leaving us as well, and maybe that's a good thing. I know you're going to be president of Rotary next year, and so it's not like you don't have anything else to do in life, and our paths will cross again. And I think that's important that we do kind of cross-pollinate with other groups, that we're kind of staying connected and perhaps even becoming more connected. But one of the things that I was thinking about with you, Dwayne, is just how positive you are, and how much I believe you have a true sense of wanting to bring people together and the community together. And I just really admire that about you. And so thank you for participating on this board, and we'll miss having you here. Tim, you've been on this thing twice, right? You've been here for like 12, 18, 16 years or something, right? Has it been that long?
There should be an award for that.
I don't know. I showed the interest in West Salem since back in '89. So
89.
Bravo.
it's been a while coming on and off. See this community grow.
Yeah, well, Tim is a wealth of knowledge, as everyone knows, who's been on the board. Tim could recall stuff back 10 years ago, 12 years ago, whatever the case is. I can't even remember what I did last week most of the time. And so I always admired that about Tim, that we'd be talking about something and Tim can say, well, you know, we were talking about this before, and this was the scenario, and he gives us good background. And so, Tim, I think that's really going to be missed on this board, frankly, some of that history that I don't have, that some of the other people here on the board don't have. And I know that you're involved with the West Salem Business Association. Is that correct? Are you still on the board there?
Yes.
Yeah. So like Dwayne, hopefully there's still some paths that cross and some cross-pollination between those groups, and we can still stay together. I think that there's a lot of work that we could do between all these different organizations in West Salem, whether it be Rotary or business or whomever, to continue to build and kind of become unified and move some things forward that hopefully this community as a whole wants to see. And so again, thank you for being part of this group. That history is really big, and you contributed a lot, so thank you.
I'm not going anywhere, but I just won't be a member, that's all.
For a year.
Yeah, for a year.
And then maybe you'll be back.
And then he'll be back on.
Yeah. 89, that was the year I graduated high school, so good for you.
Thanks.
Sorry, I had to say it. Total jerk. All right, total jerk. I apologize. And then Mike, you're also rotating off. So you've been here for 6 years or so, is that correct? You're muted. You're muted, Mike. I'm sorry, say it again.
I think a little over 6 years, because I believe I took over somebody's term.
Gotcha. Well, the one thing that I want to recognize with you, Mike, is I think that you're very quiet at the meetings, which is great. But on the other hand, when you do speak, you always seem to come with a real thoughtful, respectful, kind of almost a quiet wisdom when you're talking about things that I've always really appreciated. And while you don't say a lot, when you do say things, I tend to really want to listen, because I think, oh, Mike's saying something and there's something to be said. And I know that I'm a chatterbox, chatty Cathy with a broken string. And so I can ramble on forever, but I just really respected that about you. And I know that you love to go hiking and things of that nature. So maybe there's going to be some more of that in your future without being on this board. But are you on any other boards here in West Salem?
No, not presently.
Not presently. Any chance that anyone from your group would like to join the board?
Yeah, I've spoke with Tori about that a little bit. I'm putting some feelers out. I think we will have somebody apply. It's just a matter of who. We've got a number of people who obviously work in West Salem and then also live here. That's what I enjoyed about being on the board, is that not only do I represent the industrial base and Truett Brothers, but that I live here. So I've got a stake in it, professionally and personally. So I would like to have somebody from Truett who also is from West Salem, and we've got a number of folks that I'm talking to. So I'd say it's most likely that we will have somebody apply and join, assuming they're accepted.
Well, good. So I guess with that, I just really, again, speaking for myself as the current chair, anyone else is welcome to chime in, but I just really appreciated each of you. I wish Nick was here as well, just kind of for a final farewell type send off. But from my personal perspective, I think each of you will be missed in different ways, and the board will be lacking a little bit until we get the coffers refilled with other people. So thank you all for your service. It's been great that you've been here. And I think with that, with these seats, we have 5 seats that are now available. So there's really only 4 of us that are on the call that aren't staff. So for the 4 of us, I've already placed probably a dozen calls, if not more, reaching out to people to try and engage and get involved with this group. So to be specific, we need 2 representing the West Salem Neighborhood Association. And Tori, you can jump in on here if I get this wrong. We need 1 resident that lives in the URA. We need 1 industrial business in the URA. And we need a business or property owner from the URA. That's the 5 that we have. There's not an at-large spot, but Tori, maybe you can speak a little bit about the two representations from the West Salem Neighborhood Association and how that correlates.
What that does is that just opens it up to broader West Salem. So you're still pulling people from West Salem. They don't have to be URA specific. So we do have at large, and that's something too, where if we start to get the applications coming in, we want to fill the board. So if it means that we transition because we have, if we have somebody who meets both criteria, so if you live in the URA and you're part of the neighborhood association, maybe we could move you around. So there's some flexibility. We still have to go through, and it's still, it's detached from us. So as far as application, I've been trying to get it out there too. So if you guys want to share with, people who meet that want to participate in 7:30 right now Zoom meetings and future meetings, and meet that representation, communicate that to people. I'm happy to help get the word out as well. But as far as there's an online application, and it goes to the city manager's office because it goes through city council, who ultimately appoints people to these boards and commissions. So as far as, I just want to echo what Jeff said. I think he did a great job. The board's not going to be the same. We welcome new people, it brings a new dynamic, but you guys have been here as long as I've been here. So it'll be hard to, guys are welcome to be members of the public and still vocal, of course. And so the way it works is people who want to stay on the board, they're 2-3-year terms, and then you term out and you have to take a year break and then you can come back. So that's where Tim and everybody else, take a year break and then come back, hopefully. But yeah, so as far as representation, it's somewhat flexible. If we get applications coming in and there are ways to move things around, we'll work with the city manager's office, and if council feels like it works, then they'll make that decision. So as far as process.
So I just want to second what Jeff and Tori said. Thank you all. Mike, Tim, Dwayne, you guys have done a lot. I know you'll continue doing a lot, whether you're on the board or not, and we'll see you around. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh my God, I feel kind of sad. We were just starting to get to know each other. I feel like we were cheated for like 2 months.
Yeah, I know. We were
That
pretty
damn
much.
COVID.
I'm serious.
Yeah.
Me too. Me too. It's a bummer. Tori, I thought that Tyler Jackson was applying. Did he apply? Do you know?
So I think I'll have to check with the city mayor's office when the recommendations are going to council. I think they're going this month, so it'll be appointed. I believe Tyler is. So I don't know the finality. So Tyler Jackson, he owns business downtown. He's a West Salem resident. So he is, yeah, he's being considered for it. Yep.
So to answer that, Linda at the city manager's office just sent me a link yesterday. This Friday at noon is when city council / boards and commissions, they're meeting probably for an hour to go through all the applications of various boards throughout the city, which would include West Rab board. So maybe I plan on watching that. And if anyone else is interested, I'm happy to reach out. I can send you the YouTube link to be able to watch and participate. Let me rephrase it. You're not going to participate, but you can at least watch and see what's happening and how the process works.
You can submit written comment though, similar to a list meeting. Yes, as you saw when this agenda went out, we include, so we had to set up all these separate email addresses so people had written comment they can write, and I receive that, Therese receives that. So likewise, that'd be the case too with the people reviewing the applications for boards and commissions.
Great. Well, with that said, and with a heartfelt thank you to you three terming off, the last kind of duty for the three of you is to kind of talk about Edgewater Partnership and West Salem Business and what's going on in your guys' area. If you wouldn't mind contributing a little bit one last time, that would be fantastic. Dwayne, why don't you start us off?
Yeah. And I've got a really funky connection this morning, so apologies. I think I've been back and forth. So I'll just say one quick word. Thanks for the nod, Jeff and others. I think it's been a fun ride being a part of the board and seeing some different things in the community. So it's been good. In terms of Edgewater, I think the biggest things that what we're starting to see, I mean, with the start of the Thursday market is back up. So the numbers are down a little bit, but it's kind of creating a little bit of life of its own. I've been encouraged to see there's a few small business that are really starting to engage the Edgewater Partnership, and that's something kind of new. Usually it's kind of been a table of residents, nonprofits, some churches, schools has some representation. So it's been good, but the small business owners on Edgewater are really key. So they're starting to really jump into some things. So other than that, I mean, we're all kind of living in a COVID-19 world. So most of our regular ongoing things, be it walks, gatherings, are kind of shut down and we're on hold.
Thanks, Dwayne. Tim, anything you want to chime in for the neighborhood association or the business association?
Yeah, first I'd like to go off of what Dwayne was doing, the appreciation, great words, Jeff, on my long-term commitment to this community, and always been interested in it, and I really appreciate the praise, and everyone working with you, really appreciate your input and your thought how we can better this community. Going off just briefly, real quick, my wife opened up a shop on Edgewater. We're back on Edgewater again. She's a solo independent contractor, and it's located on the corner of McNary and Edgewater, right across the street from kind of the Plaid Pantry, next to the pie place. There was a little spot behind there near the alley with the door opening up to McNary. So during this whole thing, I've been working with the city on permits and everything, and that's been interesting, but everything's good. And so there's another business keeping that area alive.
Awesome.
One thing Sam could talk more about the business association. Just want to point out on that, working on a project to recognize the graduating seniors of the high school and out at Western Christian School. So hopefully in the near future, we'll have some lawn signs out at businesses, congratulating those seniors and, giving a thumbs up for their hard work, but not being recognized in a normal way. So hopefully the businesses can show our little kudos to them for graduating and being a benefit for the West Salem community. So I'll turn it over to Sam if she wants to add more stuff about the business association and the future of it.
Well, I think with the events the last couple months, it's almost like everything was put on hold. So we're having our first in-person board meeting today at 3:00. So more to come, but I'm just thinking I'm going to put out there, we had talked about Heidi with ACE, she's on West Salem Business Association board, and getting flowers and delivering flowers to local businesses. And so I think that's going to be a super great way to, okay, we're back, we're open, phase 1, phase 2. So just bringing it back alive, I think is where we're at. So I don't have much.
Can you guys talk real quickly? Go ahead, Dwayne.
Oh, just a quick question. Sam, with some of those new business partners that we're talking with, I think there's a website, I think if I just Google West Salem Business Association, but I just want to make sure they get connected with the business association as well. So I'm just passing them along to you guys.
You were kind of in and out, so I didn't really understand that. Can anyone translate?
That is
I'll go with
that
it.
is the story of my morning. Our Wi-Fi is so spotty.
I had a hard time too.
Hey, Dwayne, why don't you just email me some of the businesses that you're talking about, and at our board meeting this afternoon, either Sam and I could bring on this conversation and create some kind of reach out program to them.
Okay.
Real quickly, Sam, when you're talking about these yard signs for kids that are graduating, they're not yard signs that are going in at their residence. Tim indicated that it's going into businesses. Can you guys just talk on that real quick?
Mm-hmm. Actually, Tim kind of headed this project. So Tim, go ahead.
Well, the idea was there was talk about how we can, as a business community, show support, and had conversation with the school and with the senior booster president for their senior class, and everything's kind of on hold, as we all know, because of the contact of it. So at this point, we're looking to do something of signage and along Edgewater and Wallace in the near future to just, give a little, how would I want to say, a little kudos or a pat on the back for their great job. And the businesses just want to be part of it. And this is how we could do it it was a very short project to put together really quick. So anyway, that's kind of the basics of it. Should see them up, should see them up in the near future as soon as I get them from the printer. So.
I'm going to give you a call later, Tim, just to talk offline about it. I don't want to take up this group's time, but I think that's a great program. As you guys know, I'm a sucker for those high school kids, and I really commend it. I think that's a great deal.
I'm just going to say, I hope it snowballs where other people are going to start doing it too, just for in this period of time, because they're supposed to technically graduate here on Thursday. So, but from my understanding, it could be prolonged to some kind of deal that could even happen in August. So hopefully we can just show our appreciation and support to those kids.
Yeah, no question. Mike, is there anything that you'd like to just throw out there regarding Truett and what you guys are doing and things of that nature? Or?
Nothing specifically. Again, we just moved all of our staff from Front Street, so we're totally vacated over there. Everybody's in West Salem now. It will be a lot more productive being able to just walk down the hall and see everybody. Our business is kind of booming right now. With COVID, there's a lot of need for shelf-stable foods, and we've got a lot of contracts with companies who work for disaster relief and FEMA and that kind of stuff. So
cool.
presently, we've been really busy. And again, just from the industrial base, if we could have looked in hindsight, would we be where we're at right now? Probably not, as Mark had alluded to. It's not the most prime place to be, but we've invested so much here already, and we have 300 employees, so I hope that speaks for something. But again, we like the area, we appreciate being here, and I don't see us going anywhere anytime soon.
Gotcha. Thank you. So two last items on the agenda. Real quickly, is there anyone who has anything that they would like for topics next month in August? Brandon, you've been muted this entire time. Would you like to chime in with any thoughts of something that you would like to see on the agenda?
No.
Perfect. Thank you.
I have something.
Please.
I want to circle back to the conversation that we had, it seems like forever ago, about the West Salem allocating some funds to the West Salem sign when you come over the bridge and see that. So if we could talk about that, that would be awesome.
So Tori, is that something that we can, I know we talk about the agenda prior to the meeting. Can we get a line item under section 5 that talks about opportunity? I think that was under the opportunity fund that we talked about at one time, and a welcome sign or something to cement this. Brandon, please.
Actually, I do want to bring back the 2nd Street discussion for the connection between Patterson and Merlark at some point.
Okay, let's add that to the agenda if we can. And then Mark, is there anything that you would like to highlight for next month? Not putting you on the spot, not mandatory, just.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything specific. I think what people have already mentioned is good, and it's probably best that we don't have overloaded agendas in the Zoom format. Probably focus on the essentials.
Yeah, I agree.
And just to clarify too, we'll probably miss July because it's right near the 4th. So we'll meet in August 5th, I think. So, and really quickly on 2nd Street, I prefer to push that out when we have a little bit more. So we're moving forward. So it's going through budget right now, as far as we already have funding to be able to move to design and construction. I'm working with Public Works right now, and we'll probably go to a bid for the design aspect of it shortly. So that's where I'd like to come back and say, maybe at a point where we have a selection. So we pick this firm, and this is the timeline or something like that. If that works for you guys.
Yeah, perfect.
Sorry. Will we have an opportunity to comment on the design that they're planning on doing?
That's where.
Okay.
It'd be nice to have the input. So as far as when we make the selection, we'll probably work into the budget to have that person come in and have a meeting, so to capture the public's input on what they'd like to see on the street. I mean, it's a local street, but it's hopefully going to have a kind of a feel like an Edgewater. That's kind of the intent. So we'll have to balance. It's a little bit different a street. It's its own corridor, but we want to replicate a lot of that district feel in that area too. So yes, we want to have feedback with it.
Great. So kind of last thing on the agenda, Tori, going back to the city pandemic response and reopening and things of that nature, it looks like you got the floor for a few minutes here before we adjourn. Okay,
and I have Annie on here too. I'll bring her in a little bit later. She'll speak to the small business grant that was approved this last council meeting. So we started to get a sense, it was interesting because I had my college son home in December and he's like, do you think this pandemic, the COVID thing will reach the United States? I was like, in December, no. It shows you how much I know about infectious diseases. So by in late February, early March, it was clearly going to have an effect on day-to-day business, especially later in the month when the governor issued the Stay Home, Save Lives, March 24. That really had an impact, especially downtown. Because there's so many services so concentrated that really, if you didn't provide essential services or you couldn't maintain safe distances, you were shut down, to limit the spread. And so with that, a lot of city services were affected. Thankfully, our IT department, a lot of departments were adopting online options, electronic, for like permitting and things like that. There were plan reviews were already electronic. It really was a tipping point where we really had to gauge all these tools to be able to facilitate as much business as usual to the extent possible. And so I just have to say, like, from my perspective, I represent a lot. I go to a lot of meetings as far as like projects in West Salem and elsewhere in the city to track them. And so the city transitioning from in-person, say, pre-application meetings to the online format, it was like almost immediate. They went from, being able to do like review plans at the PAC desk and do that day-to-day business to online, like almost immediately. So even with us, it took some getting used to as we moved into a remote world, but being able to maintain contact. We have projects in West Salem and I manage projects elsewhere. A lot of those just kept moving. They were in a different way. We had to communicate in different approaches, but we're still moving things forward. As far as the rest of urban development, so the impacts late March, we shut down parking structures, things that couldn't maintain that safe distance or, could increase the spread. A lot of those things got shut down. A lot of things were tried to, maintain business as usual, like maintaining parks. They remained open, but we had, like, say, parking enforcement people because we weren't enforcing the 3-hour parking anymore. That resource went to parks to make sure that as people continue to go to parks, to maintain safe distances. So like play equipment, things like that, those were closed, restrooms. But as far as the community being able to go to the park and, kind of try and maintain as much safe activity as possible, that continued. So that was some of the transition is, dedicating staff to do other things when, say like enforcing parking wasn't a thing. Immediately to facilitate as businesses transition to curbside or takeout, downtown provided the 15-minute, it was a new parking options, so to help facilitate people coming in, picking up and going, so that spot would remain open, and that was a quick transition. Downtown also worked with our IT department to develop an app, a map, so you could go on and see what businesses were open. That was, I think, hard to follow, as we got into this disrupted world. There are a lot of, I have my foods that I still wanted to pick up. So it was one of those, like, how do you find out if they're still open without calling? So it was one of those easy facilitations where you could look at the map and see who's closed, maybe remodeling or just waiting it out, and who is transitioning to that takeout service. So that was pretty neat to see that go live and be available to people. So the parks, like I said, remained operational. We've been remote. I'll go in the office occasionally, pick up files, but for the most part, I can access things remotely. And since we're not public facing, as we transition into phases, we'll probably be the last to be fully, in the office whenever that is. Like I said, as far as electronic permitting and essential services, by the city, those continued almost without disruption, just in a different format. Public Works also provided a suspension of service options. So a lot of times when you start your water or your sewer service, there's like a disconnect fee. So this was a quick process to say, you know, if your business isn't operational, or, you know, if you I don't know, if you weren't able to be in a house, you could shut off that water but not be charged for it. So it was like a temporary non-payment during, you know, so there was a suspension of service for those properties. There's also, you know, people were financially impacted, they couldn't pay the bills, water, sewer, those things were going to get shut off. Wanted to make sure that the population could stay healthy in the crisis. So that was an option. Also, utility relief was provided. So what the city too has provided a consolidated webpage, so you could go there and see what, you know, if you're a business, if you're a resident, you could see in one place what the city options are, as well as the connection to state and federal pieces. So if you need more information outside of what the city provided, most links are on there as well. So, I mean, that's kind of to capture what a lot of the city has done. At the library too, they were innovative. You know, they're in the middle of their construction. So they had to resort to a virtual library and also providing like a curbside type pickup, so you could like pick out your books and then get brought to the car. So a lot of people tried to think of creative ways to still provide the service. And then now we're starting to enter, you know, a phase of getting people back to offices. So we'll start to see more people at City Hall. Will probably come later because we don't have the public face. And then Annie, if you want to speak to the grant and the financial assistance that's available to businesses.
Sure. Good morning, everybody. Annie Gorski, Economic Development Manager with the City of Salem. I'm going to speak. So on Monday, May 26th, City Council approved of a COVID small business grant concept. We are going to offer in 2 phases, just under $400,000 in small business grants. And we hope to open the first phase of applications on June 15th. Those applications will be available. We'll accept applications June 15th through June 17th. And then following that, accept or evaluate those applications on a lottery basis. We are partnering with an organization called Willamette Workforce Partners. They administer the grant program for Marion County. They've also been administering some of the layoff grant funds. So they have an online application form. They have a system and staff that are used to reviewing this. So we're partnering with them to administer the program on the city's behalf. In terms of the maximum grant amount, what we are proposing is an up to $5,000 grant for businesses with between 6 and 40 employees, and an up to $3,000 grant for businesses that have 5 or fewer employees. The target for this grant is really, because Salem is offering this, you know, as we are in phase 1 and moving to phase 2, is helping businesses reopen, helping them staff up, pay rent. Potentially their rent has been on hold through some of these other programs, inventory, protective equipment for staff, plexiglass, any of those items as well that are needed to prepare to open safely. So I'll stop there and happy to answer any questions. We'll do a big push with outreach. Once we have the materials and the application finalized this week, that outreach will go out next week. So you'll be hearing lots of information about it, but happy to answer any questions.
Tim?
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Annie. Hey, is it also used towards payroll or just for the items?
Sorry, I missed the first part of what you said.
Can you use it towards the payroll of employees, or is it just for the items?
Right now, that is an eligible expense. We are targeting businesses that haven't accessed the federal payroll protection program or other financial assistance as a, targeting those businesses as a priority first. So yes, that is an eligible expense.
Follow up. So if I hear this right, if a business got the federal, then they can qualify to apply for your grant, correct?
Our hope, we know there are many businesses that did not access those programs. And so we're hoping to target those businesses first to reach businesses that haven't accessed. So there will be a question, I think, on the application, whether or not someone has accessed another grant program or whether or not they've accessed the federal assistance. So I'm expecting that we'll get a pool of applications greater than the funding that's available. I would say follow up with, I would say that is our target. You can apply. If for some reason we don't get the demand that we're thinking, and there are businesses that access the federal program and still have needs and can demonstrate that on the application, then those businesses would be considered.
Annie, I'm sorry, can you just briefly, you said it's a $400,000 grant in total, is that correct?
Correct.
And then you mentioned two different thresholds, a 3,000 or a 5,000, and that was based on employee numbers, is that correct?
Correct.
And so can you just touch on that one more time? So it's 3,000 if it's $3,000 if it's 6 employees or less?
5 or fewer, yes.
5 or fewer.
And then up to 5,000 if it is a business with, so the maximum business size that that will be eligible is 40 employees. And that's pre-COVID. So as of, I think mid-March. So between 6 employees and 40 would be a maximum of $5,000 grant. And the total available is 388. So I said approximately 400, but 388,000. And that's 2 different phases because of the funding sources. So the first phase of funds will be about 200,000. And then we hope in July to launch another phase of that grant program.
Great, thank you. Any other questions for Annie? Samantha, you're muted, so go ahead. Lower left-hand corner. Or if you hover over your picture, there's
Can you hear me
3.
now?
There you go.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
There you go.
you guys are all frozen. Can you shake your head, yes or no? Okay, so question on application or timeline from when someone gets approved for the grant to actual funding. Can you speak on that?
Yes, so because we're partnering with this other organization, Willamette Workforce Partners, those checks or direct deposits will come directly from that organization, not from the city. We're granting the funds to them to administer this. And so based on discussion with them, my understanding is the turnaround between awards, notifying businesses that they are successful and receiving that funding could be a few weeks. So.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, not a long period of time. Yeah.
Great, that's awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one more question, Jeff.
Please.
Yes, Annie, since the organization that the money will be coming from is based in Marion County, is that going to have any effect for Polk County businesses?
Nope.
Okay.
Not at all.
All right, just checking.
Woohoo!
Great.
So if you have ideas on getting the word out, I'll share that with Tori, and please, when we have the materials, get it out to your networks and send any questions that you're getting my way, please. Thank you.
Links will be helpful. We can send them out.
Thanks, Annie.
Great. Annie, thank you for joining us, and telling us a little bit about it. As far as the agenda, it looks like we're at the end of the agenda unless anyone has anything to add. I think we're going to wrap up a little early today, about 10 minutes, which is abnormal, maybe a little bit of a blessing compared to some weeks. So unless anyone has anything else to add, anybody? Well, great. Again, thank you three for being part of this group. We'll be missing you for sure in your history, and likely you'll be hearing from me or someone on occasion when something is coming up that's kind of a major event. I think that it's important to kind of reflect back on people who have a lot of history with the board and have some different wisdom, different insights. So again, thanks to the three of you. And with that, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for
Thank you,
joining.
Jeff.
Good to see you all.
Awesome. Take care, all. Thank you.
Bye.
See you.
Be safe.
All right. Do you want to end YouTube? We can chat.